Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with Part 16, Mystic Reality, from Some Mystical Adventures by G.R.S. Mead. Chapter 16, Mystic Reality. In the modern Western world in general, and perhaps nowhere more so than in England, there exists an innate prejudice against all that savours of the mystic life. Not only among the people, but also among those who set the thought, fashion of the day, the mystic is viewed with suspicion when not treated with contempt. If we seek to discover the reason for this prejudice, the answer comes back loudly from all sides. Mysticism is not practical. It is assumed as incontestable that the one business of man here on earth is to be practical, and thereon it is concluded with emphasis that any departure from this clear duty diminishes man's efficiency and lessens his virtue. The present adventure is a very brief consideration of this matter. It will neither take up the cudgels to do battle blindly for so-called mystics against so-called Philistines, nor will it attempt in any way to lessen the worth of the practical virtues or diminish the value of the theoretical powers. It will rather endeavor to find new meanings for old names, by seeking to discover what is best in both the theoretical, in its ancient and native sense of contemplative, and the practical or pragmatic or even poetic, that is poetic in its primitive meaning. For when these natural and necessary mutual complements of man's energy are divorced, his Gnostic nature must, by the very fact, remain sterile and unproductive of living ideas. It is only by their perpetual union that man can give birth to himself in wholeness, perfection and freedom, and so be ever self-vitalized. Now, there can be no doubt that what has been called mysticism in the past must over and over again have to plead guilty to insisting more strongly on the divorcement of those two modes of man's soul than on their union. Mankind is so naturally absorbed in the practical that the most violent methods have had to be used to turn his attention away from it to the contemplative, and the contrasts and oppositions have thus been painted in the most lurid and glaring colors. Brahman is true, the world is false. Such fierce statements of absolute dualism we find set forth as fundamentals in many a devotional faith and religious philosophy. And for the most part, the adherents of the faith or followers of the thought school never stop to consider the elementary fact that no such proposition of naive contrast can, in the nature of things, set forth the sum of truth. Nor is it perceived that as long as man thinks in this mode of duality, so long must he, in the very nature of things, be still bound in his personal mind. That self-referencing daimonion which is the fabricator of all such contrasts, that marvelous godlet of perpetual division that separates all things by its Janus-faced mode of seeing. It is the truly magical or instantaneous mind alone that can embrace in its vast receptivity every pair, every contrast, every opposition, and every opposite the personal practical mind can invent. Not only so, but for it each one of every pair must immediately and naturally complete itself by means of its co-partner, which it must have with it to make its existence possible. In the consciousness of this magical mind, with all such pairs, both complements must exist immediately and simultaneously the one with the other. Or, to put it from another point of view, every single separate object is instantly fulfilled, perfected, or transformed into a wholeness by the magical mind that spontaneously completes every one object by all else. It is not proposed in this short adventure to inquire into the noumenal nature of theoretical reality as a truth abstracted from the changing phenomena of practical reality, but rather to insist that there is, in essence and fact, only one truth, of which the theoretical and practical, or rather the theoric and pragmatic realities, noumenal and phenomenal energies, are the simultaneous in-breath and out-breath of its instantaneous life. This view refuses to divorce the practical reality from the theoretical, for such a divorcement is to it unthinkable. It does not assume, to suit the prejudices of the insufficient, that the contemplative reality is true and the practical false, nor, contrariwise, that the practical is the only reality and the theoretical the baseless fabric of a dream. It does not elaborate a theory of illusion with which to label the mystery of the ever-becoming and refuse to see truth in the infinite change of appearance. Rather, it refuses to regard nature as the concealer of God, in the sense of the deluder or great illusionist, and views her as the means of manifestation of the divine, his eternal complement and faithful spouse, whereby he perpetually reveals himself. Here there is no question of reality being spirit as set over against matter, or of the actualization of reality being conditioned by a scale of increasing rarity of matter. The less matter, the more spirit; the more matter, the less, and therefore the less reality, and vice versa. For this view refuses to beg the question of the superiority of one over another of those mysterious and naturally eternal co-partners and co-equals. According to this practical theory, if there be a sequence, a scale, a gradation of planes of existence, no one of these is to be considered as in itself superior to any other in respect of reality. For the only way of thinking such a schema as self-existent in any thorough and complete fashion is by making the series ever end where it begins and begin where it ends. That is, in the mode of life conditioned by the form of a circle, the superficial expression of the more perfect symbol, the sphere. That is, say, the series both begins and ends at every moment of its existence, and every moment of its existence is the middle point of its being, and therefore every moment is equally proximate to reality. To realize this more vitally, the circle figure must be converted into a living symbol, that is to say, into a sphere of which the substance is in perpetual flux, ever entering into itself and issuing from itself, and this not only for the whole substance as a unity, but for every atom of the substance, so that wherever you as a person may be in the process, you are in the midst of it, while as monad, that is, as magical mind, you embrace the whole process in yourself. Reality is not conditioned by matter alone, nor is it conditioned by spirit alone, for matter is not without spirit, nor spirit without matter. They must, in the very nature of things, coexist, and every phase of their coexistence is in itself practical reality and theoretic reality in mutual embrace. This suggests that we have not to go somewhere else to find truth, but that truth is always as much here as there, wherever we may be, and that the explanation of one state of consciousness in terms of another is not immediate self-realization, but a departure from the practical into the theoretical, or vice versa, and so a divorcement of the twain instead of a deeper union. It is often said by the hopeful or despairing, well, we cannot know here, but all will be revealed unto us when we are in heaven, or even when we are dead. This has always seemed to me to be a very unsatisfactory expectation, for it can in no way satisfy the practical mind that requires the immediate revelation of the mystery of the actual consciousness in which we are. When a man is no longer in what is called physical consciousness, the problems and puzzles of that state are no longer immediate in the same terms. They can be at best only memories. Full realization, complete satisfaction, must in the nature of things be in the mode of immediate gnosis, and not the theoretical explanation of one state in another. But what is the physical for the true mystic? That is, from the point of view of this search for truth that lives only in the perpetual union of the practical and theoretical reality. The real physical is the natural in all its modes, for physis equal sine natura. The plane on which we happen to be at any moment of time, at any point in space, the phase of consciousness in which we happen to be, is the natural. For nature, the spouse of divinity, must ever be our immediate link with reality, or rather the immediate reality for us as individuals, and therefore the expression of truth. If we are in what we afterwards call, at another moment, a psychic state, as compared with what we now call the physical, our present physical state may, at some other moment of time, be very well thought of in its turn as psychic, when we are no longer in it, that is, when it is no longer present to immediate consciousness. Every state we are in is, so long as we are in it, physical or natural. When we are no longer in it, it pertains to memory, which is not immediate but subjective or out of the practical present. But it may be asked, what of the man who is dead and no longer possessed of a physical body? From what has been said above, it follows that he still has a physical or natural body in some grade or other of the physical labyrinth of the ever-becoming. But you will say the chain is broken, for his normal physical body is not. To this it may be rejoined, his separated physical body in the ordinary sense of the term has been dissolved, it is true, but may it not be that the link of the physical is still there for him? He is still a continuum, whether we speculate as to the existence of permanent atoms or now think of his physical body in the state which we normally call physical as inhering in or conditioned by all the bodies of humanity or even of all the creatures of creation. Its mode is changed, but its essence still is. But it may be further objected. The mystic consciousness is consciousness of unity. That alone is the mystic reality. To this we may reply, if by unity is meant some abstract state set over against diversity, then that by itself is no more reality than is diversity when regarded as set over against unity. Unity is union rather than oneness. Unity as abstract oneness is an empty abstraction, void and lifeless. Unity as an essential concomitant of reality cannot be without its co-partner diversity, and therefore the attempt to attain to unity as a something entirely apart from diversity means a suicidal departure from reality, insofar as the attempt is to attain to what has no existence apart from its complement. Unity is conditioned by diversity, and diversity by unity. If either goes, both go. Mystic reality is rather the simultaneous realization of both, one in many and many in one. Life is unity, multitude is power or manifoldness. The mystery of division is that of mind as creator of form, and the mystery of union is that of mind as dissolver of form. That life, power and mind in their essential nature can be apart from one another is unthinkable. It is therefore a somewhat confusing use of language to speak of the formless planes, when the very idea of a plane connotes differentiation and therefore form. To be free of a thing does not mean that we turn our backs on it, or run from it as the devil is said to run from holy water. The first condition of being free of a thing is to be equally content whether we have it or have it not. To be free of form connotes the possibility of taking any form at will. To be free of change means that one is ever changing. True life is this power of freedom. To be stuck in one form of body or feeling or thought, to be incapable of change, is true death. That which is ever-changing is that which is instantaneous in life, and therefore essentially superior to change. That which can take all forms is ever present in every moment of time, and alone is immortal. From the point of view then of this mystic reality, or let us say of the man who is attempting perpetually to initiate himself into the gnosis of self-realization, what meanings should be given to the theoretical and practical? In the first place, it would seem that above all else, he should strive to value them equally, and so keep them in himself in perfect balance and poise. For his goal is the birth of the justified, the birth of Horus. The theoretical, or contemplative for him, is the mode of his nature in which he conceives the living ideas of truth, and the practical is the giving birth to these ideas in the actual. To know truth, he must live truth. To live truth, his thoughts, words and deeds must match. So alone can truth for him become instantaneous and immediate. There is then a straight path in himself from within without, and the without instantly becomes the within for him. Reality is actualized as one and not as twain, as self and not as other, and truth is all in all. The practical is then no longer conditioned by his personal opinions and selfish sentiments, for the practical for him is now all that is being done, the karma of the world, the inevitable complement and completion of the theoretical, that is, the great plan and self-counsel of the divine. With this divine economy he now works naturally and therefore contentedly, blissfully, for he recognizes by experience that his co-working with nature is the necessary condition of understanding of spiritual gnosis. For nature is wise, the mother of wisdom, even as wisdom is the mother of nature. And the working with nature brings wisdom to birth in man, and the working with wisdom makes man's nature divine. The divine impulse which has brought into existence the whole method of our modern science, which boasts itself so proudly to be the handmaid of the practical, is the innate longing in man to discover the secrets of nature, that so he may know the laws of her operations, and thus by working with them free himself from the bonds of ignorance. If the present practical of science very readily lends itself to subserving the selfish interests of man, this should not be a matter of much surprise. For whenever a great impulse starts in humanity, the first manifestations of it naturally disclose what appears to be the wrong side of things, or the topsy-turvydom of it. It is the manure which enriches the soil in which the true seed is sprouting. And this may be seen very clearly in our own day, when a new and powerful interest has arisen in all that pertains to the soul. What may seem to many of us to be a degradation of all that should be most pure and holy is the natural manuring of the soil. That on all sides amateur practitioners of occult arts and swarms of charlatans of all kinds should have arisen to cater for public curiosity, and that books and articles and pamphlets and fly sheets should be spawned forth in shoals, setting forth every nostrum under the sun with glaring self-advertisement, loudly extolling the advantages of business clairvoyance, and, of course, for a consideration, imparting tips for strengthening the will for business purposes, etc., etc., and all the rest of the occult baits for the lovers of self-aggrandizement. All this is only what the experienced would expect, and proves that the impulse is great. It is the manuring of the soil and the wrong side of the great impulse to make life practical and actual here and now. Is it not also the same in no few branches of science herself? Is not physical science not infrequently made the handmaid of the false practical in the sense of commercial? The sympathies of the mystic and idealist must be all on the side of the famous discoverer of one of the rare elements, who, when the ubiquitous and earthbound interviewer asked him what was the practical application of his discovery, what was its value for commercial purposes, replied, "No use whatever, thank God." The seeker for mystic reality refuses to measure the practical by so low a canon. Money value is not a vital standard, but a corpse measurer. It is not a natural, but an artificial thing, and as such, belongs to the region of death. This, however, does not mean to say that commerce and business are not admirable means of training in the school of life. And perhaps one of the most comforting signs of the present renaissance of mystic and psychic studies and of endeavors to live the spiritual life is that many men and women of business are found in the ranks. In fact, they may be said to form the majority. Indeed, if we review the history of this movement for the last 30 years, we shall be compelled to recognize that it has been inspired by a strong desire to grapple with the facts of life on the very battlefield of the struggle for existence. It differs from almost every movement of a similar nature in the past. Rarely do we find in it people who retire from the practical life of the world or schemes to establish retreats and communities apart. All this, I think, points to the fact that the inner determination of this new endeavor is that it should be really practical and should labor to solve the problems while face to face with them. There is to be no retiring or retreating. Heaven must be brought down to earth, that earth may be raised to heaven. Realization to be of practical worth must be here and now. That which is not of practical worth is theoretically stillborn, if not an abortion. The history of the mysticism of the past teems with these births out of due time that could not support the stress of the natural life of the world and had to be kept alive artificially. There have been broods of mystics who have had to live most of their time in semi-dream consciousness, or in artificial and cotton wool surroundings. They have consequently been little able to affect the world. Let us hope that this time a more natural brood will be reared fit and eager, first to battle with circumstances, and then, when grown, ready so to use all circumstances with wisdom, that they will be recognized by all who have eyes to see as the truly practical men of the world, controllers of every environment, in that by their plasticity and adaptability they can transmute the seemingly most inopportune circumstances into occasions for great happenings and godlike activity. It should, however, never be forgotten that there is no necessity for anyone to put off the attempt to strive for self-realization to some more favorable occasion, least of all for some other life when science and environment will have made conditions easier. This means simply being content to be reborn a mollusk. Self-realization has been obtained by many a soul whose name has been set in the book of the heroes, millennia before modern science was heard of. Regeneration is a natural thing, not the product of the artificial mind molded by the opinions of the day. Indeed, it is just this which ever distorts and atrophies the natural mind, which it is the whole duty of man to preserve in purity. For the natural mind is God-given, while the artificial mind is man-made. But for the moment, enough of this matter. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe and comment, and if you can please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.